It was one of those strange early evenings in late October. Gray outside, but not quite dark yet, and cold enough to make your breath show but not your bones ache. I left work earlier than usual because the client meeting that was supposed to stretch until 6 was rescheduled last minute. No one in the office fought me on heading out. I remember feeling relieved. Not excited, exactly, but just ready to be home, or what I thought of as home. Traffic was lighter than usual, a rare break. I even stopped at the gas station to pick up Allison's favorite chai. Stupid, maybe, but I'd been trying more lately. Something between us had felt off. Nothing big or dramatic, just small things. The kind of things you don't want to notice at first. The silence between conversations. The fake laugh. The way she stopped asking me if I wanted anything when she made dinner. I don't know. Maybe I thought a warm drink might soften the weird energy. Smooth things over before they became something I couldn't smooth. I pulled into the driveway around 4:15. The lights inside were already on. That didn't feel strange. She often worked from home and liked having the place well lit, even during the day. But the moment I stepped inside, I stopped cold. The air smelled different. Not bad, just not ours. A cologne I didn't recognize, bold and expensive, with that kind of synthetic sharpness that lingers long after the person wearing it leaves. It hit me right in the nose. I stood there in the foyer for a second, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't mine. I've used the same 2 aftershaves for the past 5 years. One for work, one for weekends. This wasn't either. I remember saying something out loud, like, huh, or that's weird, just to fill the silence. And it was quiet, really quiet, the kind of quiet that makes a house feel abandoned. Or worse, like someone is hiding. I moved slowly through the front hall, trying to pretend everything was normal. Our shoes were in their usual place by the door. A couple of unopened Amazon boxes sat on the side table, still sealed. But then I looked toward the living room and saw something that didn't belong. A jacket was slung over the back of the chair by the fireplace. Dark charcoal wool with leather elbow patches. Stylish. Expensive. Definitely not mine. And definitely not Allison's style either. It wasn't hers. It wasn't anyone's I recognized. It looked new, like someone had just taken it off. I walked up to it, hesitated, then gave it the lightest touch. Still warm. Faint trace of that same cologne. Something in my chest clenched, but I kept walking. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, not yet. I made excuses for it in my head. Maybe it was her coworker. Maybe someone dropped by to talk about the charity event she'd been planning. Allison volunteered sometimes. Hosted people from work. This could be nothing. But then I went upstairs to use the bathroom, and the feeling hit me harder. The door was slightly open, the light off, but inside, there was a towel slung over the rack. Not ours. A different pattern, gray stripes, not the beige ones we'd used since we moved in together. Sitting on the edge of the sink was a razor. One of those classic, heavy metal razors, the kind that looks like it belongs in a barbershop. I stared at it. We didn't own that razor. I use an electric trimmer. She uses a small pink disposable. We'd never bought anything like that. I would have noticed. There was still water beaded around the sink bowl, like someone had used it not long ago. The towel was damp. A toothbrush I didn't recognize sat inside a cup by the mirror. And everything was a little too clean. As if someone had tried to tidy up in a rush but missed a few details. I stepped back out into the hallway, heart starting to thud a little louder now. That's when I heard her. "Allison," I called out. My voice cracked a little, though I told myself it was nothing. She came downstairs slowly, phone in one hand, face flushed like she'd just run a marathon or had been caught mid-argument. She was dressed casually, nothing too revealing. Leggings, a hoodie, no makeup, but her posture was stiff. "Jake, what are you doing home?" she asked, clearly caught off guard. Not happy, not relieved, more like I had disrupted something. "I got out early. Meeting got canceled." I tried to sound light, normal. I raised the chai cup I'd bought for her like a peace offering. "Figured I'd surprise you." She stared at the cup and blinked. "You should have texted." "You busy?" She shrugged, avoiding eye contact. No, I mean, my brother was here. He just left like 20 minutes ago. Oh yeah? I asked, trying not to sound suspicious. Yeah. He dropped by. On his way to that thing in Santa Cruz. Her brother lives 4 hours away. Last I checked, he was working overtime and hadn't mentioned a trip. Didn't know he was in town. She tucked her hair behind her ear, still not looking at me. He was just passing through. Wanted to say hi. Left in a rush. I nodded, keeping my voice calm. He left his jacket. Her eyes flicked to the chair, just for a second, then back to me. Oh, yeah. He probably forgot it. I'll ship it back tomorrow. I let the silence sit for a second, just long enough for the air to thicken. Cool, I finally said, backing off. I didn't ask about the towel, or the razor, or the toothbrush. I didn't want to accuse her of anything, not without knowing. But something in her face, in the way she shifted her weight from foot to foot and didn't ask me about my day like she usually did. It told me more than I wanted to know. That night I couldn't sleep. She climbed into bed next to me like nothing happened, scrolled through her phone until she dozed off with her back turned to me. I lay there wide awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing. Everything felt different. I thought about that razor again. The way it looked so deliberately placed, like someone trying too hard to look casual. I thought about the smell, the warmth of that jacket, the dampness of the towel. I ran through every conversation we'd had in the last few weeks, every moment I might have missed something. Every time she looked at her phone and turned it over, face down. Every night she said she was tired and went to bed early. The last few weekends when she told me she needed to work from a cafe to concentrate. I didn't know for sure, but I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't about jealousy, or paranoia, or insecurity. It was that gut-level awareness, that ancient animal instinct that tells you when something is off. Something unspoken, something hidden. And that night, lying next to her in the dark, I felt it fully for the first time. Another man had been in my home, and she was pretending he hadn't. After that night, something shifted inside me. It was subtle at first, like a door I didn't even know was there had quietly creaked open. A part of me that used to take comfort in routine, in the illusion of trust, was suddenly wide awake, watching everything. I didn't say anything the next morning. Couldn't. We had coffee like usual, hers with oat milk and honey, mine black. She scrolled through her phone, eyes darting across the screen. She laughed at something, but didn't show me. I asked what it was. She said, "Just a meme," and flipped the phone over, screen down on the table. That's when I noticed it. She never used to do that. The screen down thing? That was new. I brushed it off. At first, I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid boyfriend, the insecure husband checking call logs and asking who she's texting. That wasn't me. Or at least I didn't think it was. But when someone you trust starts lying, even in small ways, it changes the air around them. Like a smell you can't place but can't ignore either. That afternoon I was home early again. I'd been working remotely more often since the pandemic, and some days I didn't even tell her when I was home. I liked listening to the house, seeing what it was like when I wasn't expected to be there. That's how I noticed the way she talked on the phone. Her voice dropped, just slightly, and she moved rooms. Always the hallway or the laundry room, never the couch anymore, never the kitchen where I could walk in. Once, I caught the end of a call when she didn't know I'd come downstairs. Her voice was warm, playful, then silence. "Who was that?" I asked. "Oh, just Steph. She's stressed about her boyfriend again." No eye contact. I nodded slowly. Didn't sound like Steph. She looked up, narrowed her eyes. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just, you sounded different." I said it gently. I didn't accuse. But her reaction was instant, defensive, cold. "I don't need you analyzing how I talk, Jake." Then she walked away. That was new too. In the weeks that followed, I started noticing more little things. Things I might have missed before. She changed her phone's password. Didn't say why. Claimed there was a software update. I asked if she could airdrop me a photo we took at the lake last summer. She said she'd do it later. She didn't. One morning, I walked past the bathroom just as she finished brushing her teeth. She was wearing makeup. at 7:45 a.m. on a work-from-home day. You going somewhere? I asked casually. She paused, mid-lip gloss. What do you mean? You're all dressed up. I just felt like putting myself together today, she said. Why is that weird? It's not, I said. It's just new. She gave me a tight smile and left the room without responding. That night, she said she had to step out and take a call. She grabbed her coat and went outside, into the car, parked in the driveway, sat there for 20 minutes. I watched her from the upstairs window. I couldn't see her face clearly, but her hand gestures, the way she leaned forward, she was animated, engaged, like she used to be with me once. When she came back in, I asked who she was talking to. Just work stuff. In the car. I needed privacy. She brushed past me. No kiss. No joke. Just friction. Then there was the laundry incident. It was a Thursday. I remember that because it was garbage day, and I'd just taken out the bins. When I came back in, I noticed she was already doing a load, which was odd, because she never touched the washer during the week. She had a system. Saturdays were laundry days. Always had been. But there she was, dumping clothes into the machine like she was in a rush. Her coat was in there. Her coat. Who washes a coat midweek? She said she spilled coffee on it, but when I looked at the counter, there were no stains. And later, as I pulled a towel out of the dryer, I caught the scent again. That same cologne. Subtle this time. Faint, like it had clung to something and didn't want to let go. I didn't ask about it. I just filed it away. Another brick in the pile. More kept coming. She started leaving the bedroom lights on when she slept in the guest room. That was her new habit. I need space to decompress, she said. You snore louder now. I didn't argue. I've always snored, and it had never been an issue before. I began staying up later, sometimes just sitting on the balcony, pretending to read while I watched the neighborhood wind down. Her room faced the side yard. More than once, I saw her phone light flash in the window long past midnight. Always with that same faint glow. Always with her silhouette leaned in, whispering to someone. I tried not to snoop. I really did. But the human brain has its own gravity. You circle something long enough, you eventually get pulled in. One afternoon, she left her laptop open on the kitchen table. I wasn't looking for anything, I swear. I just needed the charger. But as I moved it, her messages popped up in the corner. Not iMessages, Slack. From a guy named D. No last name, just D. Thanks for the coffee, BTW. You didn't have to. My stomach dropped. Not because the message was overly flirtatious, it wasn't, but because of how normal it felt. Comfortable. Familiar. I closed the laptop. I didn't say a word. That night, I laid in bed staring at the ceiling again. She was downstairs watching a show I used to love. I listened to the laughter on the TV and tried to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, I was making too much out of all this. That I was overanalyzing. That maybe the phone face-down thing, the passwords, the video calls in the car, maybe it was all innocent. But then I remembered something. It was last month, a Wednesday. She was out late, said she was getting drinks with coworkers. When she came home, she smelled like someone else's perfume. And something else too, a muskier cologne just under the surface. She rushed past me, said she was tired, showered right away. I remember watching the water run under the bathroom door and feeling more alone than I ever had in that house. She didn't ask about my day, didn't look me in the eye, didn't kiss me goodnight. That became the pattern. And the Allison I knew, the one who used to wake me up on Sundays with coffee and accidental kisses, the one who sent me dumb dog memes in the middle of meetings just to make me smile. She was gone. In her place was someone quieter, more distant, preoccupied. Physically, she was still there. She ate dinner at the same table, sat beside me on the same couch. But her attention was elsewhere. Her laugh, her warmth, her spark, all gone. Or maybe not gone, just redirected. I tried to tell myself we were in a rut, that couples go through seasons. But this didn't feel like a season, felt like subtraction. I stopped reaching for her, stopped texting just to say hi, Stopped mentioning the little things, the cracked mug she used every morning, the song that came on the radio during my drive. Because I knew she wouldn't hear them the same way anymore. Her disinterest wasn't subtle. It was surgical. Once, I reached for her hand as she passed by me in the kitchen. A light touch, nothing dramatic. She flinched, pulled back like she didn't even mean to, then gave me a weak smile and said, "Sorry, just startled." But it wasn't fear in her eyes. It was guilt. That was the moment it hit me. The grief of what was happening wasn't about losing her. It was about realizing she had already left. She just hadn't told me yet. You can only live in doubt for so long before it starts to rot you from the inside. I'd been collecting pieces, disconnected, scattered, haunting, but I still hadn't seen the full picture. Not clearly, not undeniably, until the day I took her car in for a routine service. It wasn't even planned. She was running late for work, panicking about a meeting, and asked if I could take her SUV in for its oil change. I said sure, figuring it would K*LL an hour of my morning and maybe earn me some goodwill. What I didn't know was that it would give me the final answer I had been dreading. The mechanic, a guy named Danny who'd worked at the shop for years, recognized me as I pulled in. "Hey Jake," he said, glancing at the intake form. "This your ride?" "Nope," I said. "It's Allison's. Just helping her out." He nodded and started entering data into the system. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he said, "Funny thing, these newer models track passenger seat activity for airbag calibration. Did you know this one's been logging a ton of passenger seat usage?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Well," he continued, pointing at the screen, "the sensor logs data. It tells us how often someone's in that seat, whether or not the seatbelt is used, that kind of thing. Helps us calibrate the system. Looks like there's been regular use in the last few weeks. But the driver profile only lists her. Just odd is all." I forced a chuckle. "She probably carpools to lunch with coworkers or something." "Maybe," he said. "Still. Consistent readings for the same weight range. Not exactly random." That sat in my gut like lead. After they took the car into the bay, I stepped into the waiting room and paced. I stared at the faded auto magazines on the table, the Keurig coffee machine with the empty water tank, the wall-mounted TV playing the morning news. I didn't want to be that guy, the one snooping through his wife's stuff. But this wasn't about paranoia anymore. It was about facts. I walked out to the car while they were still working on it. The doors were unlocked. I told myself I was just grabbing my sunglasses from the glove box. But what I really wanted was to look. What I found stopped me cold. A receipt. Not just any receipt. A folded reservation slip from a resort in Sonoma. 2 nights. A king suite. 2 guests. Her name on the booking. Not ours. Just hers. The date? A weekend she had claimed she was visiting her mom for some much-needed girl time. I even remembered waving her off from the porch that Friday morning. The pit in my stomach turned to a crater. But it got worse. In the glove box was an empty jewelry box. Velvet-lined, branded with the name of a boutique I'd never heard of, a designer I'd never bought from. It was too small for a necklace. Definitely not for earrings. Probably a ring. And not for me. I held it in my hand for a long time, turning it over, trying to feel something. Anger, sadness, rage. But all I felt was a numb sort of confirmation. The kind that doesn't shock you, just quietly devastates you. When I got home, I didn't ask her about it. I didn't confront her. I just kept going like everything was normal. That's the worst part, I think. You learn how to live next to the lie. You smile. You nod. You sit across from them at dinner knowing full well what they've done. And they have no idea, you know. But I couldn't stop now. I needed more. I started watching her more closely. The calls. The meetings. The mysterious volunteer events that took her out late on weeknights. I noticed her locking her purse in the closet. Something she never did before. I waited until she showered one evening and, with shaking hands, opened it. Inside, among the clutter of receipts, hand lotion, and spare lip balm, was a flash drive. It was unmarked, unlabeled, nearly invisible, tucked between folded gum wrappers and a half-finished stick of mascara. I don't know what made me check it, other than pure instinct. I plugged it into my laptop when she went to the store. There were photos. Not many. Just 6 or 7. But each one was a blade to the chest. One in particular, I'll never forget it, was taken in a hotel lobby. The same resort from the receipt. There she was, smiling, dressed in a sundress I'd never seen before, standing with her arms wrapped tightly around a man I didn't recognize. Tall, clean-cut, stylish. His hand rested comfortably at her lower back like it belonged there. Her face looked happy, radiant even. It was a kind of joy I hadn't seen in her in months, maybe longer. Not the forced smiles she gave me during dinner. Not the polite chuckles when I told a joke. This was real, unfiltered, like she was exactly where she wanted to be, with exactly who she wanted to be with. I scrolled through the rest, her sipping wine across from him on a balcony. Her in a white robe, taking a selfie with him beside her, both of them laughing. Another one of him brushing her hair back in a way I used to. I closed the folder. Then I closed the laptop. I sat in silence for nearly half an hour. Not moving, not crying, just empty. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't doubt. It was proof. Undeniable, irreversible, ugly proof. And still, there was the small, stupid part of me that wanted to ask her. That wanted to give her a chance to explain. Some pathetic thread of me wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like. That maybe it was just a phase, a moment, a mistake. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't a drunken one-night lapse in judgment. This was intentional. This was planned. Vacations don't book themselves. Jewelry boxes don't appear out of nowhere. Affairs don't blossom in hotel lobbies without thought, without time, without desire. She had wanted this, and she had lied to my face for months to make it happen. That night, I couldn't look at her the same. We sat on opposite ends of the couch watching a show neither of us cared about. She laughed at something on her phone, some inside joke I was no longer part of, and I stared at the wall behind her, wondering how much of our life together had been real and how much had been a placeholder until he came along. When she asked if I was okay, I nodded. Just tired, I said. She smiled, reached over, and touched my knee. I didn't flinch. I didn't lean in. I just let the touch sit there, cold and meaningless. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was in the way she had rewritten our story without me knowing. In the way she reserved her real smiles for someone else. In the quiet erasure of a marriage she no longer saw value in. And I realized something then, something sharp and painful but necessary. She didn't think I'd ever find out. And if I did, she didn't think I'd do anything about it. I didn't say anything the next morning. Not the morning after that either. I didn't confront her, didn't slam the laptop shut in some dramatic rush, didn't ask her who he was or how long it had been. I just stopped asking anything at all. She had made her move. Now it was my turn. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was fumbling in the dark. I had answers. Painful ones, yes, but clarity has a strange way of sharpening you. Grief becomes direction, and betrayal becomes strategy. That night, while she slept in the guest room, the room she claimed made her feel less restless, I started pulling together every piece of evidence I could find. I created a folder on my desktop, encrypted it, labeled it innocuously, Q4 budget. Inside, I dropped everything, scanned copies of the hotel receipt, a photo of the empty jewelry box, **TS of the photos from the flash drive, even metadata confirming when they were taken. I took a screen recording too, just in case she ever wiped the originals. I cataloged timestamps, phone records, credit card statements. I hadn't gone digging before, but now I had a reason. Her half of our joint account showed transfers. Small ones, nothing extravagant, but timed suspiciously. Always before a work event. Always followed by a cash withdrawal. She was financing their time together with our shared money. That part hit harder than I expected. There was something about being robbed emotionally that was bad enough, but financially, that was like paying for your own knife wound. I wasn't just documenting the affair. I was preparing to end a war she didn't even know she'd started. By Friday, I had a small mountain of proof. Digital, physical, circumstantial. Everything I needed to show the truth if it came to that. I wasn't ready to go nuclear. Not yet. But I wanted to know that I could. If she tried to rewrite the narrative, I'd already have the ink dry on the real version. 1 week later, she beat me to it. She walked into the kitchen on a Saturday morning, holding her phone like it was a prop in some carefully directed scene. I was making eggs. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "Jake," she said, voice rehearsed. "We need to talk." I didn't even blink. "Yeah," she sighed, already bracing herself for whatever performance she thought she needed to give. "I think it's time we consider separating." There it was. The line drop, like a soft grenade thrown into our life. "Separating?" I repeated, calmly flipping an egg. "Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot lately. We're not connecting the way we used to. I don't want things to turn toxic. Maybe it's better if we take some space. Figure out who we are." She had the audacity to say it like it was mutual, like we were just two people drifting apart, not one person lying through her teeth while the other quietly built a case against her. I nodded slowly, letting her think I was absorbing the weight of her words. Inside, I was already planning the timing of my response. It had to be perfect. "That's a lot," I said, setting the plate down. "But maybe you're right." Relief washed over her face like I'd just handed her a get-out-of-guilt-free card. "I'm glad you understand," she said, trying to sound mature about it. She had no idea. The following Tuesday, she suggested we meet with an attorney. She said she'd already found someone. "Just to talk," she insisted. "It doesn't have to be messy." Of course it didn't. Not if she thought she was in control of the story. She assumed I'd roll over, that I'd give her the quiet exit she wanted, that I'd agree to split everything neatly, sign whatever papers she brought to the table, and walk away like a ghost from my own life. But she didn't know what I knew, and that made all the difference. We met at the attorney's office on a Thursday afternoon. Neutral ground, clean carpets, sad paintings. She was dressed professionally, like someone attending a job interview, not a funeral. Her posture was straight, her voice clear. She introduced her lawyer like she was introducing a friend. I watched her body language, shoulders relaxed, chin high, practiced tone. She was ready to perform. What she didn't know was that I wasn't there to play a role. I was there to end the show. The lawyer began with small talk, then transitioned into how we might amicably and efficiently begin the process of dissolving the marriage. He handed me a folder light, maybe 5 or 6 pages, and asked if I'd had a chance to consider any preliminary division of assets. I glanced at Allison. She nodded toward the papers. "It's just a starting point," she said, like she was offering me a menu. I smiled politely. Then I reached into my bag and placed a thicker folder on the table. "This is my starting point," I said. Her lawyer opened it, his face still warm with professional confidence. That changed quickly. With every page he turned, his brow tightened. His hands slowed. The conversation paused. He looked up at her, then at me. "These are photos?" "Yes," I said. "And financial records. Count activity. A trip booked to a hotel in Sonoma under her name, but not for business. Receipts from a luxury boutique. Surveillance from the garage sensor logs. And messages. Some indirect, some less so." Allison's face went pale. "I'm not here to argue," I continued, "but I'm not here to be manipulated either. If she wants to discuss divorce, we can do that. But the narrative won't be fictional." Her lawyer closed the folder and cleared his throat. "We may need some time to review these materials. I assumed you would." Allison didn't speak. Not a word. She sat motionless, blinking hard, her hands clasped too tightly on her lap. When we left the building, she followed me to the parking lot. "Jake," she said, her voice cracking. "Why would you?" "Because you already did," I said. She looked like she wanted to fight it, to deny, to explain. But the words wouldn't come. I watched her swallow them, one by one. She'd spent months crafting a reality where she was the one taking control, stepping into her truth. She thought she could quietly exit, minimize damage, save face. But now she was the one caught off guard, exposed under the lights she thought she controlled. Back home, I didn't speak much. I didn't need to. My silence said everything. She tried to reach out in small ways. Asked if I wanted tea, if I was cold, if I needed help with groceries. Her voice softened, like a button reset to default settings. But I wasn't the same version of myself anymore. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I didn't slam doors or scream or fall apart in front of her. I simply disengaged. She had made a calculated decision. And now she was dealing with someone who had done the same. I set up appointments with my own lawyer. Took steps to secure my finances. Updated passwords. Forwarded mail. I wasn't reacting. I was moving deliberately, methodically. She noticed. I could see it in her eyes. One night, she stood in the doorway of the living room while I was reading. "Jake," she said, voice small. "Can we talk?" I turned the page in my book. She waited. I said nothing. That's when it started to hit her. The shift. The fact that she'd lost the story. Not because I caught her, but because I didn't chase her. In the days that followed the attorney's office, something shifted in Allison. She didn't lash out. She didn't scream or throw things or storm off into the night. She did something far quieter, far stranger. She deflated, like a balloon slowly losing air. No pop, no warning. Just a soft collapse into herself. She moved through the house differently. Slower, lighter. She stopped closing doors all the way. Her footsteps became hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be where she was. The woman who once filled a room with her presence now walked like a guest in her own home. And I let her. I didn't argue. I didn't scold. I didn't talk much at all. I simply gave her the space she never offered me when she was lying, and I watched what it did to her. It was unsettling, how fast the cracks began to show. She started waking up earlier than usual. I'd find her sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring into nothing. She wouldn't even notice me come in. When I cleared my throat, she'd flinch like I'd startled her, then plaster on a weak smile, the kind you give a stranger in a waiting room. "Morning," she'd say, voice brittle. "Morning," I'd return, offering nothing else. And that was it. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about the future. We existed in a state of limbo, cohabiting a house that felt less like a home and more like a holding cell. Each room echoing with things we no longer said. She tried to anchor herself back into routines she once abandoned. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found her making pancakes. My favorite. She hadn't cooked in weeks. Months, really. She used to say she didn't have the time. But now there she was, mixing batter like she was trying to summon a version of herself from years ago. She smiled when I walked in. "I thought you might want breakfast." I sat at the counter, nodded once. "Thanks." I ate in silence. She watched me, waiting for more. Praise, gratitude, warmth. But none came, because by then, my appetite wasn't just for food. It was for truth. And that part of me had already starved. Later that day, I found her reorganizing the hallway closet. She had pulled everything out. Coats, winter boots, scarves, and was sorting them like she was trying to reclaim control over something. Anything. "You don't have to do that," I said flatly as I passed by. She looked up quickly, eager to respond. "I know. I just thought it might help clear my head." I didn't answer. That night, I came downstairs and found the living room dimly lit, soft music playing, candles burning on the windowsill. The TV was paused on the opening screen of a movie we used to watch every fall. She sat on the couch in pajamas I hadn't seen in years. Ones she used to wear when things were good. "I thought maybe we could watch this together," she said. It almost broke me. How hopeful she sounded. Like a child asking for one more bedtime story, even though the lights were already off. But I couldn't reward performance anymore. I sat in the armchair instead. Watched the fire flicker. The candles sputter. "Maybe another time," I said. She swallowed hard. "Sure, of course." We sat there in silence, the movie's menu music looping endlessly, filling the room with reminders of a past we couldn't touch anymore. She went to bed early that night. Alone. I didn't need to exile her to the guest room anymore. She chose it herself now. Like she understood that her presence no longer belonged next to mine. The silence between us wasn't cold anymore. It was final. Still, she kept trying. Little things subtle at first. She'd fold my laundry without asking. Pick up groceries she knew I liked. Replace the light bulbs I hadn't gotten to yet. These weren't grand gestures. They weren't even romantic. They were survival. Her way of asking, "Am I still allowed to matter here?" But I didn't reward her with affection. I didn't punish her either. I simply existed. Unmoved. Neutral. It drove her crazy. One night, I heard her crying in the guest room. Soft at first. Then louder. A broken rhythm that rose and fell like waves crashing on themselves. I stood outside the door, listening. Could have walked in. Could have asked what was wrong. Offered her a shoulder, a conversation, anything. But I didn't, because I wasn't her husband anymore. And she wasn't my wife. The title still existed on paper, but in every way that mattered, it was gone. She knew that now. I think that's what made her unravel. She started texting me again. While I was home, in the same house. "Do you need anything from the store? Want me to make dinner tonight? I'm sorry about everything." The apologies came without specifics. Never a name. Never an admission. Just hollow words typed by someone who finally understood the weight of their own choices, but too late to shift the scale. I didn't respond to most of them. Once, I typed out, "You're sorry now because you lost control. Not because you lost me." But I never sent it. She started wearing makeup around the house again. Not heavy, not obvious. Just enough to look like she was trying. Like she wanted to be seen again. But I didn't look at her the same way anymore. The woman I once adored, once fought for, once would have followed into fire. She was gone. Replaced by someone I recognized but no longer trusted. Like seeing an old photo of a friend who betrayed you and realizing their smile was always a little off. Sometimes, I caught her staring at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Her eyes would linger too long. Not with love, but with longing. Like she was trying to memorize the version of me she never expected to see again. The version who wasn't begging for her attention, wasn't scrambling for her approval, wasn't breaking under the weight of betrayal. I was calm now, collected,